Hello, I am here with Bibigi Haile, and I'm a little challenged by that, the French. Um, so BBG is here to talk to us a little bit about purpose, and especially as our search for purpose or this sort of kind of quest for purpose shows up, particularly in midlife for women. So first, I just want to read a little bit about your background. That BBG founded the Beauvoir Group to give women the license to be unapologetically visible, make bold moves, and stop apologizing for what they want in their professional lives. As a sought after keynote speaker and strategic advisor to women, BBG has rightfully owned spots on national stages, sharing her approach to women's visibility, imposter syndrome, and personal branding. When she isn't on stage, she is still speaking. Her podcast, Speaking with Women, invites women to share their experience in the modern workplace. BBG is also and especially the mother of a wise 8-year-old, third culture kid, podcast and book nerd, and a running enthusiast. And I can attest it, I sort of agree with a lot of those things. So that's awesome. Great to be with you. And thanks for being here, BBG.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah. Yes. So let's dive in. Purpose. Purpose can be such a murky term. How do you define purpose?
So, I gave this some thought when I wrote that, it's an episode that we're talking about that I had written for my podcast. And when I was thinking about that, I gave this a lot of thought and I was like, what does it actually mean? We don't know. Everybody's talking about it, but we don't know. So I think we go about it as my why, right? The reason that I'm out here, what I'm put on earth to do, what my goal, my mission in life is. So I think that's how most of us define it. I try not to think from a sense of a purpose and more like from having a sense of purpose in moments. But it's that why. Why am I here?
Okay. And so you talk about around the 10 to 15 year mark in women's careers. What tends to happen? What are you finding as you're working with women in this age group? What shows up for us around purpose?
Yeah, so I think there is a transition at that time. I mean, I know I have had a transition. So this is, in our late 30s, early 40s and up. So there are a number of things that are happening that sometimes seem like contradictions, right? So there is the great thing, which is you start to have a stride in your profession. You're starting to feel like an expert, even if you don't feel like using the term. That's not what you say to people, but you feel comfortable in your work. You feel, there's a French expression to say bien dans ses pompes, like you're well in your shoes. You start to get potentially promotions, in management roles, etc. So life in your professional world seems to get a bit less difficult. But at the same time, life in your personal environment might start to get a little bit more complex, right? You might have, for those of us who will have children, who want to have children, that's when we might start, having a first, second, third child. They're growing, we're not getting much sleep. It could be also the moments when we're starting to take care of parents that are elderly. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening in our personal lives. And so you have this combination that's happening, I say 10 to 15 year mark, because, we've gotten the degrees, gone to school, gotten experience. And then what also happens is we start to feel like, what else is there, right? Like, what else could I be doing? Is this all there is? And we might start getting maybe a little bit annoyed at work. We're like, I know more than these people. Why am I uncomfortable saying things or positioning myself or speaking up? And yet I know that I know more than these people, right? And so that starts as a sort of, it's a bit longer, but that feeling of, this is bugging me. There has to be something else. I want something else, right? You wake up in the morning and you're less excited about work. You're like, why didn't I get this promotion? Why did this person get this promotion, right? So it's a moment in time when a lot of things are happening at the same time and they're contradictory. So you're living in this strange space.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, of course, we're generalizing around this timeline. And for me, I
Yeah.
think it happened like, well, I had my second child later. And my kids at 31 and 41. And I think for me, it was like when my kids were each little, I didn't have that feeling because I was so wrapped up in taking care of them and doing what needed to be done. It was sort of like when they went to elementary school, maybe that I was like, okay, I have a little more time now that
And sleep.
I, a little more safe. Yeah, theoretically, not always in reality. Um, yeah, so that I feel more rested maybe and have this time that I'm starting to think about. There is space maybe for what's next or a little bit of boredom or that kind of thing too. So just I guess to normalize that obviously this can happen at any phase
At any
and different
moment, yeah.
phases. Yeah.
It's a transition. It's a life transition, right? Like, so what it's describing is less the rigidity of the years. So I'm taking shortcuts in terms of 10 to 15 years because that's what I've recognized in myself and in a lot of my clients. But I think what's more relevant is what you have highlighted, which is the time period in our lives, like what's
Mm,
happening in our lives and the transitions there, right?
yeah. Yeah. So, what are some myths and misconceptions that you have come across regarding purpose?
Yeah. So one is that it's a monolith, right? Like there is a thing that is our purpose and we need to search for it, like this Yoda kind of search. And once we find it, everything's going to be okay. Right. So that's the one thing. I'm searching for my purpose and I'm putting all of my energy into that.
And I would also add, sorry to interrupt you, I would add,
Yeah,
okay, I found a purpose and now thinking I'm not allowed to, like, I found it. Now I'm not allowed to have another one, right? Or something
exactly.
else, right? Maybe you're going to get to that one,
Exactly.
but yeah,
It's like it becomes a prison, a thought prison. But then also once you found it, if you tell everybody, oh my God, this is my thing. And then like a couple of years later, you're like, yeah, maybe not. Right.
right, right.
Like you've put yourself into this prison.
Yeah.
The other thing about purpose, and more than purpose, the way that we search for it is that we search for it like this entire focus, all our energy goes into that. And we expect that it needs to be hard, right? Like we need all the coaching, the journaling, and maybe we do, but the buying into the myth that it has to be hard versus leaning into what's already easy.
Mm,
There's so many aspects of our lives that are already easy or that we fall back onto when we're struggling. We're like, you know what? I'm going to go and draw. I'm taking an example. I'm going to go and cook, or I'm going to go and write a podcast episode. I procrastinate writing podcast episodes. Those things where we feel a sense of settling in, we think they're too easy. That's not my purpose, right? Like that's my hobby. And so
right.
we go on the struggle bus because we imagine that that's where we're going to find whatever we think our purpose needs to look like.
Yeah.
The third thing is we don't know what it looks like. Like, when you embark on that quest of searching for your purpose, what is that variable that you give yourself that when you hit, you're going to say, okay, this is it. I found it. This is my purpose. We don't have that. So we're embarking on this quest that takes so much energy, time from a lot of other things without a clear idea of what it might look like. We assume that I'm going to feel really good. I'm
Mm.
going to feel aligned. My work is going to matter and it's just going to be beautiful. And but no, right? Like there
Yeah.
are days this podcast won't come out. Like I'll just sit in front of my computer and just it won't come out, right? Um, so there is not a lot of flexibility in the way that we approach purpose. The myth that we have bought into about purpose remove any kind of flexibility and remove any kind of play. I'm gonna test stuff out. If it works,
Right.
cool. If it doesn't work,
Right.
try something else.
Yeah. So on one hand, it doesn't need to be such a grind, such a hustle, so painful and hard. And yet sometimes it still could be difficult and hard.
It's
But
the
it's not the expectation and it doesn't have to be all the time. And as you're talking about that, can it be easy? Can it be what we find what we're naturally good at? Maybe it's that zone of genius sort of
yeah,
framework, right? Like it's
yeah,
like because it's that curse of knowledge is what I've heard it called, sometimes too, which is like it's so common knowledge to me and it comes so easily to me that can't be that special because
Yeah.
it feels so easy. Yeah. But in fact,
There-
that could be where the juicy stuff is.
and it is, right? And we not only think this can't be easy, but we also think this doesn't have value. And so proposing it to the world as something that we want to put out there, we're like, yeah, but doesn't everybody know this? This is one of the things that I find the most with my clients. The thing that they find the hardest to put out there, or sorry, to put a price around, is the things that they've known how to do for years. It
Mm,
comes really easily to them, but they're like, doesn't everybody know this?
yeah.
I have a sticker here on my computer that says, how can this be easy? What is the path of least resistance? And when I feel myself start to get on that struggle bus, and this is a friend of mine who uses that term, but I just fell in love with it. When I feel myself go on there, I'm like, no, how can it be easy? I have a client recently who told me she just had like a moment where she was like, okay, I'm ready to put something out in the world. And she has a platform that she loves and it's the right one for her. But then she was like, how do I put it out in the other platforms? And it was keeping her stuck because she hated all the other
Mm,
platforms. I was like, why would you want to? Why would you want to? Everything is clear for you. You found the platform you love. You know what you want to put out there. You know how, you know to whom, you have all the information and your energy is focused on those places that don't feel good to you. How about
mm.
we just like throw them in the garbage and you turn back all that positive, creative energy that when she talks about it, you can see her just
Oh,
do
yeah.
this. How about we focus on the places and things and ways of showing up that give you that lighting you up, right?
We get stuck in the I'm supposed to, I should, it's what it's it's what you have to do, all of that, which
Yeah.
guilty, totally guilty. Yeah. Okay. So you talk about pushing back ideas. Tell us what you mean by that.
So I took some notes around that. So one of the pushing back ideas is that this approach that we have to purpose of like it's a struggle, right? Like I have to find it, I have to stop everything, is that it's not particularly useful, right? Because it doesn't give us information. All it does is put us in a state of forcing energy, but it doesn't give us information about what we're good at, what we enjoy doing. It doesn't allow us to test. And so I think my biggest pushing back idea is just stop searching for the purpose. Just stop, right? Start searching for the places where you feel good, the moments when you feel good, when you're doing something and your shoulders are not like up in your ears as an earring, right? Um, Sometimes they are as an earring because we're out of our comfort zone. Like I'm doing a YouTube, session with you. I don't do video usually, so I can feel that my ears are close, my shoulders are closer than my ears than they should be. But that's a very different place than the it has to be hard. There are places in our lives that feel good. There are things that we do easily. There are, your girlfriends, they will call you for something, and most of the time it is the same thing that they're calling you for, right? Um, and so if we lean into those moments, we start to get curious about those moments, then we can do like more of a bottom up approach, right? Like I'm doing the things and now I can say, okay, which things feels good? I'm going to keep this, I'm going to keep this, I'm going to throw this out, I'm going to throw this out. The other thing with that approach is we start to get proof, because a lot of the times what happens when we get stuck in our head around this whole imposter syndrome or whatever else you want to call it is that we don't have proof from others that what we're doing matters.
Mm.
That's what we're looking for a lot of the time, right? So we don't have proof. But if you start testing things, right, whatever it is, what we're doing right now, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go test it out. It feels super hard, but let's do it. And then I realized that what I love is the conversation. So the conversation is not hard. I'm able to forget the camera when I'm on the conversation. Like, you know what? If I don't think about the fact that there's a camera, I could do this all day. So I'm going to try it. And then you might send me a message and say, oh, that was such a cool conversation. I'll be like, oh, okay, that's a cool conversation, right?
Yep.
And then it puts me in this virtuous cycle that is completely different from the, okay, should I be on a podcast? Should I be on okay, what kind of podcast should I be on? A video podcast or a just audio podcasts. But I think right now what's in is video podcasts. I should do that, but I don't like it. Like, maybe I should get a coach to tell me, like, so I can think about what type of podcasts I should be on. But like, okay, no, let me just take a course first about public presentation. And then, so,
It's like
right.
thinking ourselves out of it, and or just staying so stuck in the problem solving rather than testing it, like you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. It's that spiral. And now we're here, right?
Yep.
Like, Alia Jack the S, like they say, like it's gonna happen, right? But it just is a wonderful thing to try and get information and data on.
And it sounds like this attitude of curiosity, and curiosity with like you're talking about energy, what fuels my energy, and then to play around with, of course, if you're trying something new, there's going to be nervous energy. I mean, to be
Yeah.
expected, right? So that's
Yeah.
okay. Yet, how did you feel afterwards? And it still could feel exhausting, but in a good way versus the like that was so not for me, exhausting kind of way. So
100%.
yeah.
100%. I made a note on the paper as you were talking about that curiosity is an entry point, but I think for women especially, something else needs to come with curiosity, and that's permission.
Yes.
Give ourselves permission for this exploration, right? Because it feels so risky. Like, what if I explore and I fail? What if people say that I keep trying different things? What if, like, there's so many what ifs that we can't give ourselves the permission to be curious? And so I think those two things really need to come together. I also love what you said about nervous energy, but the difference between what depletes us and what feeds us.
Right.
I love to talk, probably because I love to hear myself talk. But if I do 2 podcast interviews a day, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. Like,
Yep.
I have no more energy, right? It doesn't mean I don't love doing it. It hasn't depleted me and stressed me out. It's just that I've given it my all,
Mm,
and then now I'm done, right?
yeah.
So sometimes it'll feel harder, but you can make a difference between how it feels in the moment versus how it feels after. Now you're tired, you've given it your all, and you sort of, you know, do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Good point. So, what is your specific approach to uncovering purpose in the episode that I really loved and listened to? And it was episode 57, by the way, if anybody wants to go back and listen to it. You talk about 3 mindsets or practices.
So the first one is doubt. And I've been thinking about doubt quite a bit. I've made jokes about how I've been someone who's loved doubt since I was a little girl, just playing. What doubt is an attitude of playfulness, right? Like, you're just in your mind, you're saying, maybe this is true, maybe it's not. And so one of the places where I recommend people apply doubt to is the things that they take for granted. It should be hard. People find their purpose. What if you don't? Right? What if you don't? Does it matter? Can you find moments when you have a sense of purpose? So just applying doubt to the injunctions that we get in our lives, that things should be a certain way, and saying, well,
Mm-hmm.
what if that's not true?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking for an answer, just asking the question, what if that's not true? What if it
Just
was something else?
yeah, questioning all these assumptions, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And giving ourselves like space and permission again to question them, right? um the other one, and I was taking notes around that, so that habit that we have of comparing what people are doing versus what we are doing, right? And so looking at, I have this conversation so often with people where they're like, but she's doing this, he's doing that, aren't these all the things that are expected? And just thinking, that path of yours, it sounds like a guru type of thing to do, that we each have our path. But the truth is, everybody's on their own struggle bus. So if you're looking to them for answers around the way that you should be doing what you're doing, you're completely losing that connection, curiosity, permission that you're giving yourself, right? So it's giving yourself that space, the not comparing, the doubting, and then testing, just playing, right? And allowing yourself to test. And if things don't work, that's fine. Try something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Which brings us to the next point, because I was going to jump in because that's as you're talking, I'm thinking, and part of that is trusting ourselves, because it has to come back to this is our thing, not someone else's. And that is what, if we're talking about entrepreneurship or visibility or coaching in that sort of is what I'm bringing to mind, what comes to mind as you're talking. What's going to resonate with people most is someone who is so authentically themselves, not trying to model someone else's path. And so, and I feel like you're a great example of that is, you can tell that you do your own work and really try to follow your own path, but that we have to trust ourselves and that wisdom and not get lost in the comparison and all of that. So talk a little
Yeah.
bit more about that.
Actually, I want to give you an example of something I did this morning with a friend. She is a woman who has a spectacular amount of knowledge, and she's putting herself out in the world as an entrepreneur. And she has moments where she's doubting that knowledge. Like, I mean, this is 20 years of expertise and the degrees and like crazy amount of expertise. And so we did an exercise, and I want to offer it to your listeners to do because it was so fun but impactful. So I said to her, I said, okay, let's imagine that I have a friend who needs your service and I'm describing you to my friend. And so I described her. I said, look, there is this woman. She just went out on her own. And these are the services that she offers. She is the perfect person for you because she does this, she has this. And I described everything. And I didn't invent anything. This was not me fluffing her up. I had made notes. I had on my paper the list of her qualifications, the years of experience, and I was just describing them with the enthusiasm of somebody who was saying, you need to work with this woman. And what that did was, she was like, oh, that is me. We're unable to see it for ourselves.
Yes.
When you play that game with somebody else that says, sell me to someone else, right? Like, tell someone else about me and let me listen to you. You get that sense of, there is not a single lie in what this person just said. That is me. And I am really that awesome, right? So yeah,
I love that.
the whole world should know about that exercise because it was so powerful. We were just role playing, and she was like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, we so again take for granted all of our experience and knowledge. And not only is it the curse of knowledge, we don't recognize how much we do know or all the experience we've had, but we are always on to the next thing, looking forward, most of us. And so we don't stop to pause and give ourselves credit for all of the hard work and all that we have, all of that's been accumulated. So that's a great exercise. And that's what we need, masterminds, groups, coaches for, is to be able to reflect that back to us because we're not very good at doing it ourselves, but we can practice that too. Yes.
We
So
can
that's
practice
great.
it, and seeing somebody that I think that one moment when somebody does it for you, whether in a mastermind, and you're 100% right. Like, that's why I'm going towards group coaching, because there is a power in people witnessing each other that one-on-one can never give you. But like, just that exercise, that moment when you see yourself in somebody else's eyes, it unlocks something. After that, you do your own work, but that moment unlocks something, and you're like, maybe I won't believe it right now, but it's there. It's in my head. It's sitting here. And now I can just let it, percolate. And when somebody asks me, so what's your rate? You have that voice, right? It's not, I'm a new entrepreneur. Fine, you're a new entrepreneur, but you are an expert with 20 years of experience, master's degree, and all of these qualifications, right?
Yeah. You get a taste of that ownership of it, right? I mean, even if it's a taste, that you hang on to that. And then that can expand. It's great.
And it's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so experimenting. I'm sorry, we skipped over experimenting. So your three mindsets or practices. I jumped right to trusting yourself, but experimenting. And you've talked about that before too, testing it out. So I think we kind of, but to outline them again, it's doubt or question and kind of have that curiosity, that not take for granted all of these assumptions that we're told. Experiment and pay attention to that energy level, like you were talking about, and then trusting ourselves. And all going, and it probably cycle back and back, cycle back.
And
Let
me jump in there. Thank you, Shonda, for bringing that back, because my memory is that of a pigeon. The trusting ourselves is actually specific, because trusting ourselves is super important, but we never trust what we don't like. Right? We never trust. You're doing something and you hate doing it. And because our mind is always so focused on the struggle and that things should be hard, we will gaslight ourselves and be like, no, like, stop being a spoiled child. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't like this. And the problem with that is that it then doesn't allow us to sort of have that internal knowing of this is for me, this is not for me, this is for me, this is not for me. So what I would really like people to hear is you need to be the first person to allow yourself to hate something. It doesn't mean you're not going to have to do it. I do work I hate all the time. Everybody does that. But I acknowledge to myself, one, I'm not good at it. Two, I don't feel like doing it, and three, I hate it. Like it's just unpleasant for me. So doing that, you sort of welcome yourself as in, like, I see you. I know this sucks. And so then you can have access to other things, right? In your way of showing up, you can feel safe because you've given yourself the grace of, you're allowed to hate this. Somebody else should be doing it. Sucks that you have to do it now, but you're allowed to not like it. So thank you for reminding me, because it's important that we see ourselves in all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, but that we see ourselves and that we hold ourselves safe in those spaces so that we can expand after, right?
Right. And maybe at some point too, hold that as information that there are things we can perhaps hire out eventually or not, but that it's, that's okay. Maybe next year I'll be able to hire this part out because I know I definitely don't like doing that. But for now, I'm acknowledging I don't like it and I will do it and it's okay. And as we kind of wrap up a little bit here, I'm thinking some women might be saying this feels self-indulgent and self-indulgent. So,
Mm,
the permission around why do I even, or is it okay for me even to want to explore purpose because isn't that self-indulgent?
yeah. So for me, we should think about that as our inner police pushing back on the things that we're trying to do, right? If you think about it, if we have been socialized and have socialized ourselves to think that things need to be hard, to think that we should be working all these long hours, to think that we can't just lean into something when we are like, okay, what does feel like? What does fun feel like? We're like, you have time for that? You have time for a nap? That's a problem, right? Like we immediately get onto that
Mm,
policing of like, no, these are the hours you're working, and so one of the things that we need to apply doubt to are those little voices that come up and tone police or activity police or feeling police us, where it tells us like how we should be experiencing things. That means they're successful. How about if successful was that I get to take a nap?
mm,
How about if successful was that I get to do 2 podcast interviews a day, pour everything into it, and then I am done? How about if successful is that I say, I don't know if I have a purpose. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I do know the moments when I enjoy myself. Just the doubt, asking different questions than the ones that lead us to the same wall that we keep banging our head against. So,
yeah.
something to
Yeah.
try.
Definitely. Again, it comes back to that experimentation because I think something else that comes up for women, especially, really high functioning women, is if I take the nap, if I allow myself to slow down and rest, then I'm going to want to do that all day long, every day.
Which is a fact.
I'm going to open the floodgates of the resting situation. But I would guarantee that it's not going to happen.
It's not. And you know what, Shonda? If it does, it's giving us information.
Yeah.
Our bodies probably don't need to sleep the whole day.
Right.
But if we're sleeping the whole day,
Right.
there is data there. Like
Right.
what is going on
Right.
that does that, right? Like rather than strong arming ourselves into, because I've done that. The sitting in front of a computer when your brain no
Mm,
longer wants to, I've done it.
yeah.
It's useless.
Right. Right.
It's
Exactly.
useless. You're not winning at it, right? So, and your book speaks so well to that. But like, there is a moment when we need to tell ourselves, what's a different question I could be asking? What's a permission slip I could be giving myself?
Mm-hmm.
How could I be doing this differently? And that question, what is the path of least resistance? Because that's where we get our answers from.
Yes, yes. What feels like flow, what feels good energy, what feels easy and in a engaging way, not in a completely passive, I'm along for the ride, easy kind of way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today about purpose and how to play around with it, experiment, and make it fun and
Yeah,
simple, and not such a grind, and something that we do is such an intellectual exercise, which I
yeah,
think get lost in.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was fun. This was flowy. I was on camera,
Good.
but still felt flowy. So thank you so much.
Good, good. All right. Thanks, BBG.